Hey, it's John Nolan here. Listen, I could tell you that gas prices are going up, food prices are going up, inflation's going up, but you already know that. When it comes to important life decisions in my life, I pay close attention to my intuition and to the science that I'm getting. And lately, more and more people from the food industry, trucking industry, packaging industry have been telling me, listen, a big crash is coming. We're going to have huge food shortages, and I pay attention to that. People are moving out to the country. They're growing their own food. That's exactly what everyone needs to do, but also prepare in the short term, have emergency food ready. That's why we partnered with My Patriot Supply. So if you hop over to preparewithinspired.com, you can save $150 on a 3-month emergency food supply kit today. We just encourage you to look it up. If this is the right thing for you, do it now. Go over to preparewithinspired.com. Hey, Inspired Tribe, how's it going? My fellow freedom lovers, it's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining us, liking, subscribing, and sharing this with your friends and family. It's a pivotal time in our history, and it's beautiful what's happening. It's also disturbing. So we're trying to peel the onion one video at a time, one live stream at a time, and always point towards solutions and division and positive outcomes. So let's dive into it. What's been happening? A little interesting news that I think we should keep track of. One very positive thing that we'd like to start with today is what we're observing in this country here in the United States is now a very open fight against the sexualization and pedophilia in schools and kindergartens. We see this in many, many states. School boards, parents, teachers, local politicians, federal politicians, state politicians, governors. There's a big move to address this, to get sex out of our kindergartens, to get sex out of our elementary schools, and to stop this woke communist agenda. It really is a communist agenda, and it was ushered in many, many decades ago by the fake sexual liberation, a complete mind-controlled anti-human movement. We're going to talk about this in a second, but what we're seeing is some really, really positive things that finally they're beginning to absolutely hit the brakes hard and say no more sex education for our kindergartners, no more woke sex shit in the kindergartens and in our elementary schools, where through really nefarious and evil means, pedophilia has crept in. Through nefarious and evil means, minds are being twisted and controlled. It has nothing to do with acceptance. It has nothing to do with the human spirit. It has everything to do with mind control. I encourage you all to watch our conversation with Kathy O'Brien that we shared yesterday here. We're going to put the link up here, and please watch the interview with Kathy O'Brien, an MK Ultra CIA mind control slave survivor. She came out of it and has lived to tell her story. Really, really empowering. But it all leads back to this fake idea of the sexual liberation, which was really all about demoralization of society, of detaching, making love, of detaching the creative process of co-creation, creating new life from love, from relationship, from family, a complete perversion of society. And it's crept so far into the school system that parents are finally seeing it and saying no more. And I encourage you, not just take the sex out of the schools, take your children out of the schools until we can really, really restructure, transform the education system. And Kristin and I have deeply studied educational models, different schools, different approaches from all across the world. There are amazing things that allows children to actually grow wonderfully, beautifully with joy and fun and learn at their pace and their interest. And it's just absolutely amazing what's out there. So I encourage you to take them out of the school, because leaving the children in this broken school system is kind of like putting them on a bus that has no more brakes, has an absolute maniac driver, and is speeding down the highway with 200 miles an hour, going for the abyss, going for the edge of the cliff. We need to take them out. And we've, when our children were at school ages, they're out now, but when they were, we pulled them out. We just went a different route, which was an amazing decision. And there's so many concepts right now. There's so many teachers who are deciding to leave the school system, teach privately or teach pots of children, and just a lot of things going on. Please educate yourself on that subject. Moving on, interestingly enough, as always, it's the unelected groups that make the policy calls, right? Like we have here the WEF, the World Economic Forum, a bunch of maniacs, no one elected, no one wants to hear from, but they have huge influence in all governments, infiltrated all cabinets, infiltrated all administrations. They're calling for the end of car ownership. This is nothing new, but it's new for the masses. I can tell you this, my father-in-law has been in the auto industry all his life, and he told me some 15, maybe even more years ago, he had a meeting with some high-profile people from Israel that have told him back then, car ownership is going to be a thing of the past. We're going to have subscription models. It's kind of like having a phone. You're just going to use what you need, and you're going to have a monthly payment, but you don't have to own, and you will not own, and it'll all be electric, and it'll all be controlled. And I believed him back then. I knew it. I saw the writing on a wall, but now they're coming out with this. Many countries and states are beginning to ban gasoline and diesel engines by 2030. So cars with conventional combustion engines won't be allowed to be sold anymore. We already see the ushering in. It's all in the name of climate change, right? We see that once again, dictatorships are taking over this process. And we're going to talk about the solutions here in just a little bit, because there are always solutions. It's absolutely just about control. When people don't have means of transportation anymore, when people need to rely on a system that's outside of their control. And even though we know the oil industry has been extorting us for 100 years, and even though we know better solutions are out there and always have been out there, even though we know there's clean energy, we know there's clean power, we know real clean power, we know these things, they're being suppressed, and once again systems are being brought in that will require us to obey and to play by their rules. That's their plan. It's not going to work. It isn't working. It's a beautiful thing. We see this now, a beautiful awakening. So moving forward, interesting fact, and it doesn't surprise anyone, former Dallas Fed chief Richard Fisher slams Pelosi for insider trading. Nancy Pelosi, there's no nickname to describe Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she's just horrible. But at any rate, so the former chief of a criminal organization, the Federal Reserve, slams the speaker, Nancy Pelosi, another criminal of the highest caliber, for insider trading. It's a joke. It's like a slap on the wrist. And of course, the Pelosi's, like all other members of Senate and Congress, have been known to partake in insider trading, and they have their loopholes how they can do it, usually through their spouses and husbands and wives and whatnot. And so they do it all the time. In this particular case, they had to sell some shares at a loss because their purchase of the shares of the company coincided with a new bill that was just passed, the CHIPS bill, to boost chip manufacturing in the United States, because we're so dependent on Asia, especially China and Korea, for chip manufacturing. So, I mean, these are just joke stories. You can just laugh at them. Given the level of organized crime that's in government, this means nothing, but it's a little bit of a thigh slapper, you know? Let's just laugh about these things. Also, Germany's going into really an extreme recession. Their consumer purchase power, it's not purchase power, but the willingness of the consumers to purchase any consumer product has gone down 30%. It's the lowest ever number that's been measured since 1991, when they started tracking these things really professionally. So it's on an all-time low. Of course, energy crisis in Europe is full on full steam, which is a man-made, house-made energy crisis. It never needed to happen. They want it to happen because they are making this huge transformation, because they want people in a bind. They want people cold as fall and winter approaches. And in Europe, it's going to get, heating season usually start in Central Europe, will start in maybe mid-September. People need to heat. End of September and October, the latest. And then it goes through March, April. So there's going to be a very, very tough winter ahead of the people. Absolutely man-made, stupid, idiotic crisis They had a sweet deal with Russia for the longest time, and they did not prepare, had no contingency plans. Russian gas is absolutely the only way at this point in this current structure to keep this afloat. But you all know how this game is being played. You understand this. You understand the mechanisms. So brace yourself. Europe also here in the United States, brace yourself too. We're maybe a little behind the curve on that, but it's coming. And it's all for the common good, by the way, from our perspective too. This has to come down. This crazy, absolutely evil system has to come down. It's unfolding. It's falling apart. And our intention was always to have a smooth transition to real beautiful things. And the transition is coming. The people who think, these entities who think they're winning are losing. They have their back against the wall, their erratic behavior, their illogical choices, and their complete downfall of their power shows it. We're just in these times. But there's a solution, like always, and a way to approach this. Before we go into the solution energy, I want to talk about what's happening in the Netherlands a little bit. And I'm going to read a little bit from an article from the Defender, Bobby Kennedy's Jr.'s organization, and he's got a news outlet too. And they write, in early June, the government of the Netherlands announced it would cut the size of livestock herds in the country by 30% to meet European Union nitrogen and ammonia pollution rules. Now, we have all seen the huge protests in the Netherlands. The people are rising up. This is what they are doing there and what they're doing all across the place. What they're also doing here is absolutely a depopulation agenda by cutting food supplies, by nationalizing food supplies, by killing farmers, virtually speaking and literally speaking. And so they go on to say, according to Thierry Baudet, a Dutch parliament member, the government is following the script of the Great Reset, which requires weakening the country, making it more dependent on food imports, and diluting nationalism by taking more immigrants. To make room for immigrant housing, they need to take land from the farmers. Yes, it's a whole agenda that's been playing out. Mass immigration into Europe has, begun many, many years ago, decades ago, and it was never done with a real plan. It was never done with the well-being of all people involved in mind. It was always done to break down culture, to break down a national identity. It was to break down these things. It's always mind-boggling to me that people from predominantly strict Muslim countries would want to live in a predominantly Christian or Judeo-Christian culture like you can find it in the Western world, mostly good or bad or right or wrong. It's not the discussion here. It just doesn't make any sense to me because a lot of them do come into European countries and want to impose their religious fanaticism, want to impose their rules, want to impose their laws on the people there. And the politicians have been playing along with that game and actually encouraging it. So you have lots of cities in Europe today where whole parts are inaccessible or very undesirable for the population, for the French population or German or whatever population to actually go into, because they're literally occupied by a foreign culture that hasn't asked for permission or hasn't tried to assimilate or hasn't tried to blend in, quite to the contrary. And I respect all cultures. I respect the diversity in this world. I love learning from different people. We love connecting. We have no beef with different cultures whatsoever. We love the diversity of this world. What this is about is a diluting and radically weakening countries and cultures for the sole purpose of ushering in this control system. This needs to be understood. This needs to be detected, seen, and countermeasures need to be stronger than they are currently in place. Let's talk a little bit more here about the Netherlands. The newly assigned Minister for Nature and Nitrogen Policy, Christian van der Waal-Zegelink, is married to Piet van der Waal, who together with his brother are heavily invested in a major online grocery retailer, Picnic. Go figure. In September 2021, Bill Gates invested an estimated $500 million into Picnic, thereby becoming one of its lead investors. Gates' involvement has raised questions about government corruption. Well, no shit. It's always the same game, right? You have people in the government who do your bidding. It's happening all over the world in all administrations. What's happening now is uncovering. Bill Gates, you need to hide. You need to hide. People are getting mad. People are really rising up, and you better pack and leave. I mean, leave Earth. Don't you have all these projects going on? Don't you want to go to different civilizations or planets or galaxies or whatever? Just, go do it. At the same time, the Dutch government is preparing to radically restrict livestock farming and meat production. Gates is gobbling up farmland back home. Despite land prices being at a record high, Gates purchased a 2,100-acre potato farm in North Dakota in June, bringing the total land share held by the Gates Red River Trust above 270,000 acres. And this is what they're really doing. So Bill Gates is buying up farmland from people who cannot farm anymore because they are restricted by rules and regulations that keep them from farming. And so he comes in, buys it up and says, I'm going to lease it back to you. But there's going to be certain restrictions. You're not going to be able to do livestock there anymore. You're not going to be able to grow the food you used to. And we want to have a lot of soy and all the other stuff that we need for our artificial meat, for the Impossible Burger and for the Beyond and whatever they are producing. It is to usher in a full control system. Now, the solutions, and we have to get through this to understand our solutions better. Number one, people are calling for civil disobedience. I hate civil disobedience because the opposite of civil disobedience is civil obedience, and we shouldn't be obedient, right? Whom are we obedient to? We are the people. Every government in the world derives its power from the people. That's where they get it from. And when we withdraw it, game over. They have none. And that needs to be finally fully understood with your whole being, who you truly are. In any country, but let's stick to our country here in the United States. If a law violates the Constitution or your inalienable rights, the law is null and void. So stop obeying laws that go against your rights and go against the Constitution. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So it's not civil disobedience. It is peaceful non-compliance. Peaceful non-compliance. Do not comply with your own enslavement. Do not go along. Violate laws that violate the Constitution, because it's not a violation. This is a principle of law, that a law cannot violate the Constitution. It cannot violate your rights, because it is then in itself null and void. It is a well-established principle of law. What gives society a moral foundation in the justice system, in the legal department. So it's really, really important that we begin implementing this in our daily lives. We did this over the past 2.5 years. We simply did not partake in the silly mandates, rules, and restrictions. And we simply said, no, we're not doing it. There's no basis for this. It's all built on a house of lies. We are not participating in any of it. And here we are living really well and enjoying life and expanding and thriving and flourishing because we are staying true to our principles. And so you have to do the same if you want to live a free and sovereign life. It's just the times that we're in. And when we talk about all the farmers that are seeing their livelihoods being taken away, the farmers that are being outbid or that are being purchased up by trusts and people like evil Bill Gates, I encourage you, look into the new solutions. You have been boxed into a style of farming and even raising animals that was always destructive to you, destructive to the land, and destructive to nature. I mean, what we call conventional farming is really not conventional farming. It makes no sense whatsoever. But also farmers were pressured from generation to generation into this industrial style of farming. I encourage you all to look into permaculture, which can be established on a humongous scale, and it has now been proven through many studies and tests that it will yield more profit. You will use no pesticides. You will replenish the earth, the soil. You will have greater results. It is a wonderful system because it actually copies nature's system. That's what it is, permaculture. Look into food forest abundance. If you are a farmer, small, big, medium, whatever you are, you see the trouble, the writing on the wall for your livelihood, or you already are in trouble, please reach out to Jim Gale from Food Forest Abundance and see how you can work together and what they can do for you. I just encourage you to do this also. Peaceful non-compliance, right? Do not comply with things that violate your Constitution and your rights. Number one. organize in groups. In a few days, we're going to share a video of our friends down in Sarasota who built a beautiful group of like-minded people that's growing. People are coming together, sharing ideas, sharing synergy, sharing resources, and just co-creating local communities that finally begin sticking together again. It's a beautiful thing. They're going to share how they do it and how you can replicate this. You don't need money for this. You don't need an organization, a company, or any structure. It's fairly easy, and we're going to have them on. So it's all about going inward first, find your true spirit, your true power, your true voice, and then organizing locally, withdrawing energy from everything that enslaves you, and look into the beautiful systems that are already out there just waiting to be implemented. As I said, food forest abundance is one of the most important things we should look into, because they absolutely help with the planting of freedom seeds in terms of how you can become independent, how you have healthy and beautiful food, nutritious food for your body, and how you help your community become strong and free and sovereign again. And last but not least, we'd love to invite you. What Kristin and I love to do most is empower people to live their true purpose, find their true spirit, find their real voice, remember who they really are. And this is what we're going to do at YADO. Here we're at YADO, which stands for You Are the One. And it's a retreat coming up from September 29th to October 2nd. We're going to meet in Cape San Blas, Florida, a beautiful, beautiful place for 3.5 days. We're going to dive deep, breathwork, meditations, exercises, and we're going to go beyond our daily lives, daily rituals, leave that behind, dive into the deep space, and go find out who you really are, what's been holding you back, and set yourself free from that so you can go and thrive no matter what the circumstances are, because you have that power within. If you feel inspired to join us for YADO, just send us an email to info@inspiredchannel.net, put YADO in the subject line, and we'll respond with all the information that you need. We have a few slots left. Again, if you feel inspired, really feel a nudge, and this is it, and this speaks to you, just reach out to info@inspiredchannel.net and put YADO in the subject line. All right, Inspired Tribe, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. We love you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon.